The stadium was a cavernous beast, silent for now, but soon to be filled with 50,000 screaming fans. I stood in the center of the stage, the spotlight a blinding, solitary eye fixed upon me. But I wasn't the star. I was the ghost. Behind the heavy velvet curtains, my voice, the raw, haunting soprano that had made the name Lin Xia a global phenomenon, vibrated through the air. On the stage, bathed in the glow I had earned, Lin Xia lip-synched to my soul, her movements practiced and empty. "You're late on the high note, Yao." Lin Xia's voice crackled through my earpiece, cold and impatient. She stopped her mock dancing and shielded her eyes against the lights, looking toward the wings where I stood in the shadows. "Do it again. From the bridge. And put some more heart into it. My fans expect perfection for the world tour opener." I stepped out from behind the curtain, my throat aching from 6 hours of nonstop rehearsal. I looked at her, my best friend since conservatory, the woman who wore my songs like a stolen skin. "Xia, I can't do this anymore. My name isn't on a single lyric credit. The fans don't even know I exist. I want to sign my own contract for the next album." Lin Xia's expression shifted from annoyance to a terrifying, smooth blankness. She walked toward the edge of the stage, her high heels clicking like a countdown. "Yawa, we've discussed this. You have the stage fright, I have the face. You're the shadow, and I'm the sun. That's how we survive. Without me, you're just a girl with a pretty voice and no platform. I'm the platform, Xia." I wrote every note of Ethereal. I sang every track. I shouted, my voice echoing back at me from the empty stands. "I'm going to the press tomorrow. I'm telling them the voice of the century is a fraud." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Lin Xia didn't scream.
She didn't argue.
She simply looked up at the massive, 5-ton lighting rig suspended directly above the center stage, the one I was standing under. "You always were too sentimental, Yao," Lin Xia said softly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small remote. "You think the world wants the truth?
No. They want the icon.
And icons are better when they're tragic." "What are you doing?" I asked, a sudden, cold dread pooling in my stomach. "I don't need a ghostwriter who talks back," she said. Her thumb pressed a button on the remote. Above me, a sharp, metallic snap rang out. I looked up just in time to see the heavy steel cables whip upward like snakes. The massive chandelier of stage lights, a jagged crown of glass and metal, began its descent. I tried to run, but my feet felt heavy, trapped in the nightmare. I saw Lin Xia standing at the edge of the stage, her face illuminated by the falling lights, a serene, beautiful mask of murder. "Goodbye, Yao," she whispered. "I'll make sure your funeral music is beautiful. I'll even tell them I wrote it for you." The impact was a blinding white flash of pain, followed by a weight that crushed the breath from my lungs. I felt the hot sting of blood and the smell of ozone from the shattered bulbs. As the darkness rushed in to claim me, my last thought was a silent, screaming vow: if I ever breathe again, I will strip the music from your throat and the gold from your name. "Shenyao, are you even listening to me? This is the opportunity of a lifetime." The voice hit me like a bucket of ice water. I gasped, my hand flying to my chest, expecting to feel the jagged metal of the lighting rig. Instead, I felt the soft, cheap cotton of my old college sweatshirt. I blinked, the world slowly coming into focus. I wasn't under the stage lights. I was sitting in a cramped, sun-drenched dorm room. The air smelled of burnt toast and cheap jasmine tea, the scent of my life before the fame. Across from me sat Lin Xia, looking younger, her face devoid of the expensive fillers and the cold, predatory edge I had seen in the stadium. She was holding a stack of papers, the ghostwriting contract that had started it all. I'm sorry," I stammered, my voice sounding raw, but whole. "The contract, Yao," Lin Xia said, leaning forward with an eager, faux innocent smile. "The label wants me to be the face, but they love your compositions. If you sign this, we both get out of this dump. I'll be the star, and you'll be my exclusive composer. We'll be a team. Like we always planned." I looked down at the calendar on my desk. August 15th, 2024. I had traveled back 2 years. This was the day I had signed away my soul for a partnership that ended in my murder. This was the moment I became a ghost. You look like you've seen a ghost, Lin Xia said, her eyes narrowing slightly. Is it the money? I told you. We'll split the bonuses 60/40ths. I have to pay for the stylists and the PR, you know. I looked at her, and for a second, I saw the woman with the remote control, the woman who had watched me die with a smile. My blood turned to liquid nitrogen. I slowly reached out and took the contract from her hand. You want me to be your shadow, Xia? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. I want us to be successful, she chirped, oblivious to the change in my tone. Come on, Yao. Sign it. We're best friends. I looked at the signature line. In my last life, I had signed it with tears of hope in my eyes. This time, I gripped the pen so hard I thought it would snap. I didn't sign it. Instead, I slowly, deliberately tore the stack of papers in half. Then I tore them again. And again. Until the floor was covered in white confetti. What are you doing? Lin Xia shrieked, jumping up from her chair. That was the only copy. Do you have any idea what you just threw away? I didn't throw it away, Xia, I said, standing up to face her. I was taller than her, a fact I had always hidden by slouching to make her feel more like the star. Now I stood at my full height. I just realized that I don't want to be a ghost. I want to be the one who haunts you. You're insane, she hissed, her face contorting into that ugly, familiar mask. You think you can make it on your own? You're a plain girl from the suburbs with a voice that's too technical for the charts. You'll be begging me for a job in a month. We'll see, I said, walking to the door and swinging it open. Get out of my room, Lin Xia. And don't bother auditioning for the Star Maker competition next week. I've already taken the last spot. She froze, her eyes widening. You're auditioning? As a singer? As myself, I said. Now get out. As she stormed past me, I felt a surge of electric triumph. The timeline had shifted. The shadow was gone, and the sun was about to rise. But I wasn't going to be a star. I was going to be a storm. The lobby of the Lu Entertainment Tower felt like a cathedral of ambition. Glass elevators zipped up and down like silver needles, and the air was heavy with the scent of expensive floor polish and the desperate sweat of 100 hopefuls. I stood in line, my number, 1042, clutched in my hand. It was a flimsy piece of paper, but it felt like a shield. You really came, a sharp, familiar voice whispered behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Lin Xia. She was dressed in a shimmering red cocktail dress that looked more like an award show outfit than an audition ensemble. She had spent the morning at a professional salon, her hair a cascade of perfect, golden waves. Beside her, I looked like a commoner in my simple black jeans and a fitted white shirt. I told you I would, Xia, I said, my voice calm. You're wasting your time, Yawa, she said, her voice dripping with fake pity. I've already spoken to the producers. They're looking for the total package. You have the voice, sure, but you don't have the stage presence. You'll freeze the moment the red light goes on. Why don't you just give me the song you were working on? I'll make sure you get a generous check. The red light doesn't scare me anymore, I said, finally turning to look her in the eye. Because I'm not singing for a check. I'm singing for my life. Number 1042, Shen Yao. Please enter room A, a staff member called out. I walked past Lin Xia, her face twisting into a scowl of disbelief. I pushed through the heavy double doors of the audition room. It was a massive, dimly lit space with a single spotlight focused on a microphone stand. Beyond the lights sat 3 judges. 2 were mid-level producers I recognized from my past life, but the man in the center made my heart skip a beat. Lu Ju. He was the CEO of Lu Entertainment, the man they called the Godfather of Pop. He was younger than the rumors suggested, with sharp, aristocratic features and eyes that were as cold and deep as obsidian. He sat with his fingers steepled under his chin, his presence radiating an aura of absolute power. In my previous life, I had only seen him from the wings of a stage, a distant figure I was too terrified to approach. "Shun Yao," Lu Ju said. His voice was a rich, dark baritone that seemed to vibrate in my very bones. "You haven't listed a background in performance. Only composition. Why are you here?" "Because the notes I write need a soul to carry them, Mr. Liu," I said, stepping into the light. "And for too long, I've let others try to provide one." "Bold words," he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, though his eyes remained frozen. "The song is ethereal. Your own composition. Whenever you're ready." The music began, a haunting, melancholic piano track I had written during the loneliest nights of my first life. In my past life, Lin Xia had sung this with a breathy, artificial sweetness. I took a breath, feeling the phantom weight of the lighting rig above me, and then I let the first note fly. I didn't just sing. I screamed my survival through the melody. I sang about the darkness, the betrayal, and the fire that had brought me back. My voice filled the room, a raw, powerful soprano that shook the glass partitions. I saw the two producers lean forward, their eyes widening, but I kept my gaze fixed on Lu Ju. When I hit the final, soaring high note, the one Lin Xia had always struggled with, I saw Lu Ju's hands slowly unsteeple. He stared at me, his icy composure finally cracking. The music faded into a silence, so thick it felt like physical weight. I stood there, panting slightly, my heart hammering against my ribs. "That wasn't a performance," Lu Ju said after a long silence. He stood up, his tall frame cutting a terrifying silhouette against the backlight. He walked toward the edge of the table, his eyes never leaving mine. "That was a confession. Does it matter, as long as it sells?" I asked, my voice steady. "It matters to me," he said, stepping down from the dais and walking toward the stage. He stopped just outside the light. "The industry is full of puppets, Shen Yao. I'm looking for a master. Come to my office at 8 a.m. tomorrow. We need to discuss how we're going to dismantle the current hierarchy." "I have a condition," I said, surprising even myself with my audacity. Lu Ju paused, his eyebrows arching in amusement. "A condition? You haven't even signed a contract yet." "I want the rights to every song I've ever written for Lin Xia," I said. "I want her voice silenced before she even begins." Lu Ju looked at me, a dark, predatory light flickering in his eyes. He reached out, his fingers grazing the air near my cheek, though he didn't touch me. "I like a woman who knows how to hold a grudge. 8 a.m. Don't be late." He turned and walked out of the room without a backward glance. I stood in the spotlight, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. The ghost was finally stepping out of the shadows. The top floor of the Lu Entertainment Tower wasn't an office. It was an apex. I arrived at exactly 7:55 a.m. The receptionist, a woman with hair so sleek it looked carved from marble, didn't even ask for my name. She simply gestured toward the heavy obsidian and glass doors at the end of the hall. My heart was a steady, rhythmic drum against my ribs. In my previous life, I would have been shaking, clutching a demo tape like a lifeline. Today, my hands were empty because the music was already in my blood and the strategy was in my head. When I pushed the doors open, the first thing I noticed was the silence. It was a pressurized, expensive kind of quiet. Lu Ju was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to me, looking out at the city as it began its morning crawl. The sunlight caught the sharp lines of his charcoal suit, making him look less like a CEO and more like a king overseeing his battlefield. "You're early," he said, not turning around. "I like people who understand that time is the only currency we can't print more of." "I've already wasted 2 years of my life, Mr. Liu," I replied, my voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "I don't intend to waste another minute." He turned then, and the intensity of his gaze was like a physical weight. He didn't sit behind his desk. Instead, he walked toward a small lounge area and gestured for me to sit. On the low marble table sat a folder, my folder. "I had my team run a check on the ethereal composition," Lu Ju said, his voice dropping into that dark, silk-wrapped baritone. "You registered the melody and lyrics to a private copyright vault 3 months ago. Yet, Lin Xia has been performing a stripped-back version of it in her underground showcases, claiming it as her own. Why let her play with fire for so long? Because you can't have a spectacular forest fire without a bit of dry wood, I said, leaning back. I felt a strange, electric spark of connection as our eyes locked. I wanted her to build her entire brand on my foundation. The higher she climbs, the more air she'll lose when I pull the floor out. Lu Ju leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes tracing the line of my jaw as if he were trying to read the blueprints of my soul. You're not just looking for a debut, Xinyao. You're looking for a massacre. Is that a problem for you? I asked. On the contrary, he whispered. He reached for a fountain pen on the table, but instead of handing me a standard artist contract, he slid a different document toward me. This is a joint venture partnership. You aren't just an artist under Lu Entertainment. You are the creative director of your own brand. I provide the capital, the distribution, and the muscle. You provide the genius and the fire you mentioned. I looked at the contract. It gave me 50% ownership of everything I touched. It was a deal unheard of for a newcomer. Why give me this much power? I asked, looking up at him. Because I've spent 10 years looking for someone who hates losing as much as I do, Lu Ju said. He stood up and walked toward me, stopping just inches away. The scent of sandalwood and bitter espresso enveloped me. He reached out, his hand hovering near my shoulder before his fingers brushed against a stray lock of my hair, tucking it behind my ear. The contact was brief, but it sent a jolt of heat through my veins that had nothing to do with revenge. And because I want to see what happens when the ghost finally takes the stage. I stood up, the contract clutched in my hand. Then let's start. Lin Xia is filming her big debut teaser at the studio today. I want to be the one to direct the sound engineering. Lu Ju's lips curled into a predatory smile. I'll have the car ready. Let's go see if your best friend can handle the truth. The recording studio was a sanctuary of acoustic foam and cold glass, but today it felt like a gallows. Through the triple-paned window of the control room, I could see Lin Xia. She was standing in the vocal booth, wearing a pair of oversized designer headphones, her eyes closed in a pose of rehearsed passion. She was attempting to record the bridge of Ethereal, my song, the one she had tried to buy with a blood-stained contract. I stood in the shadows of the control room, my arms crossed. Beside me, Lu Ju leaned against the console, his presence a silent, heavy pressure that made the air feel electrified. He didn't speak. He simply watched me, his gaze curious and dark, waiting to see how I would play my first hand. Wait, the sound engineer said, pressing the talkback button. Xia, we're losing the pitch on the high G. You're sounding a bit thin. It's the monitor mix. Lin Xia's voice crackled through the speakers, sharp and offensive. She yanked her headphones down around her neck. I told you I need more reverb. It's hard to find the soul of the song when the tech is this flat. I stepped out of the shadows and walked toward the console. The engineer looked up, startled, his hand hovering over the faders. The tech isn't the problem, Xia, I said, my voice cutting through the intercom like a blade. The problem is that you're singing from your throat because you have nothing in your heart. Lin Xia froze. She squinted through the glass, her eyes widening as she recognized me. Then, her gaze shifted to the man standing just behind my shoulder. The color drained from her face as she saw Lu Ju. Yao? What is this? She stammered into the microphone. Her voice was amplified, echoing around the room in a pathetic, hollow way. Mr. Lu, I didn't know you were coming to the session. Yao is she's my friend. She's helping me with the arrangement. She's not your friend, Lin Xia. Lu Ju said, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that seemed to vibrate the very floorboards. He placed a hand on the back of my chair, his thumb brushing against my shoulder for a fleeting, burning second. Meet the new creative director of Lu Entertainment. From this moment on, every note you sing, every breath you take on a stage, and every lyric you claim must be approved by Xinyao. The silence in the studio was so profound I could hear the hum of the cooling fans in the server racks. Lin Xia's mouth fell open. She looked like she had been slapped. Creative director? She whispered. But she's a student. Mr. Liu, you can't be serious. I'm the one you're investing in. I'm the face of the tour. And she is the voice, Lu Ju replied coldly. One that you've been trying to lip-sync to for far too long. I sat down in the high-backed leather chair at the center of the console. I reached out and slowly pulled the master fader down to 0, cutting her off in mid-protest. The visual of her mouth moving behind the glass with no sound coming out was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Get out of the booth, Xia, I said, my voice calm and absolute. You're done for the day. You're not ready for this song. In fact, you might never be. Lin Xia threw her headphones onto the floor and stormed out of the booth, bursting into the control room a second later. You bitch, she screamed, lunging toward me. You think you can just take over? I've worked for this. I've built a brand. Before she could get within arm's reach, Lu Ju moved. He didn't use force. He simply stepped between us, his tall frame acting as an impenetrable wall. He looked down at her with a disgust so pure it made her stumble back. Security is waiting downstairs to escort you to a smaller, secondary studio, Lu Ju said. You'll be recording backup vocals for the trainees until Mission decides if you're worth the effort of a debut. Backup vocals? Lin Xia's voice was a shrill, broken thing. She looked at me, her face contorted with a hatred that mirrored the night she killed me. You'll regret this, Shen Yao. You can't hide behind him forever. I'm not hiding, I said, looking her in the eye as she was led out by 2 burly guards. I'm finally standing up. Once the door slammed shut, the room returned to its pressurized quiet. I felt the heat of Lu Ju behind me. He leaned down, his face inches from mine, his hand resting on the console right next to my own. You handled that with remarkable cruelty, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. I think I'm going to enjoy our partnership. Cruelty is just justice that's been delayed, Mr. Liu, I said, turning my head to look at him. Call me Ju, he said, his thumb grazing my jawline, a gesture that was both a claim and a promise. And let's see what that voice of yours can do when it's not being stolen. The air backstage at the Grand Theater was a frantic mix of ozone from the lighting rigs, expensive hairspray, and the sharp, metallic tang of my own adrenaline. Tonight was the Star Maker finale, but I wasn't an auditor anymore. I was the guest performer, the mystery voice that Lu Ju had teased to the press for weeks. I sat in my private dressing room, staring at the woman in the mirror. I wore a gown of midnight blue silk that clung to my curves like liquid shadow, encrusted with crystals that mimicked a star-strewn sky. I looked like a queen. I felt like a weapon. A soft, rhythmic knock sounded on the door before it swung open. I didn't need to look at the reflection to know who it was. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly, the air growing heavy and charged with a familiar, magnetic tension. Lu Ju stepped inside, looking devastatingly handsome in a black velvet tuxedo. He closed the door behind him, sealing us into a private world away from the chaos of the crew. He didn't speak at first. He just leaned against the doorframe, his dark eyes raking over me with a slow, deliberate intensity that made my skin prickle. Is the bird ready to fly? He asked, his voice a low, melodic vibration. Or does she need a push? This bird has already survived a fall, Ju, I said, turning in my chair to face him. I let a small, playful smile touch my lips. I think I can handle a few thousand people and a live broadcast. He walked toward me, his movements slow and predatory. He stopped just inches from my chair, looming over me. The scent of his sandalwood cologne was intoxicating, a scent I had begun to associate with safety and danger in equal measure. He reached out, his long fingers grazing the bare skin of my shoulder before moving up to adjust the diamond earpiece tucked into my hair. You look dangerous, Yawa, he murmured, his thumb trailing a slow, burning path down the side of my neck. I almost feel sorry for the audience. They have no idea they're about to be dismantled. Only almost? I asked, tilting my head back to meet his gaze. The flirtation was a game we had been playing for weeks, a high-stakes dance of power and attraction. I thought you enjoyed a good massacre. I enjoy watching you perform one, he said. He leaned down, his face so close I could see the flecks of gold in his obsidian eyes. But I find myself becoming increasingly possessive of the weapon. Perhaps I should have kept you hidden in my office after all. Too late for regrets, Xiao Lu, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. You're the one who gave me the stage. And I'm the one who will be waiting for you when you step off it, he replied. He straightened up, but he didn't pull away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, exquisite silver charm, a phoenix with its wings spread. He pressed it into my palm, his hand lingering over mine.
A gift.
To remind you that you've already burned. Everything from here on is just the ascent. Is this a bribe for a better performance? I teased, closing my fingers over the cool metal. It's an investment, he said, his lips curling into a rare, genuine smile that made him look younger, more human. Now go out there and make them forget that Lin Xia ever existed. I want to hear your voice echoing in this city until dawn. I won't just make them forget her, I said, standing up and smoothing my gown. I'll make them realize they were never listening to her in the first place. As the stage manager called my name over the intercom, Lu Ju stepped back, opening the door for me. As I passed him, his hand caught mine for a fleeting second, a squeeze of pure, unadulterated support. Sing for me, Yaoer, he said. I'm singing for justice, I replied, glancing back at him. But I'll save the encore for you. I walked out into the wings, the roar of the crowd hitting me like a physical wave. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like the storm. The final note of ethereal didn't just hang in the air. It seemed to vibrate through the very marrow of the 50,000 people in the stadium. For a heartbeat, there was a silence, so profound it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Then, the roar erupted, a tectonic shift of sound that nearly knocked me off my feet. I stood in the center of the stage, the light blindingly white, feeling the phantom weight of the lighting rig from my past life finally vanish. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was the sun. As I walked off stage into the velvet darkness of the wings, my lungs were burning, and my skin was humming with an electric high I had never known. Waiting there, leaning against a flight case with his arms crossed, was Lu Ju. The flickering shadows of the backstage machinery played across his sharp features, but his eyes were fixed on me, glowing with a dark, triumphant heat. You didn't just sing, Yaoer, he said, stepping into my path as I reached him. He caught my hands, his palms warm and steady against my trembling fingers. You started a riot. The servers are already crashing from the search volume for your name. I told you I'd make them forget. I panted, looking up at him. The adrenaline made me bold. I didn't pull my hands away. Instead, I leaned into his space, the scent of his sandalwood cologne grounding me. Did I give you the encore you wanted? You gave me a masterpiece, he whispered, his voice dropping to that dangerous, intimate register. He raised one of my hands to his lips, his gaze never leaving mine as he kissed my knuckles. But I think the world is going to be very jealous of the time I plan to steal from you tonight. Is that a threat, CEO Lu? I teased, my voice breathy. It's a promise, he replied, his thumb grazing the sensitive skin of my wrist. The moment was shattered by a sharp, hysterical shriek from the hallway leading to the dressing rooms. Get your hands off me. Do you have any idea who I am? I am the face of this label. I stiffened. I knew that voice. It was the sound of a falling star hitting the pavement. Lin Xia burst around the corner, her hair disheveled and her makeup smeared from what looked like a frantic crying fit. She was clutching a tablet in her hand, her eyes wide and bloodshot. Behind her, 2 security guards looked hesitant, clearly caught between their orders and her former status. You, she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. You think you've won? You think you can just overwrite me? I just uploaded the original demo of Ethereal to my social media. I told them you stole my notebooks. I told them you were a disgruntled assistant trying to sabotage my career. I felt a flash of the old fear, but it was quickly doused by a cold, refreshing wave of contempt. I didn't hide behind Lu Ju this time. I stepped forward, pulling my hands from his to face her. The original demo, Xia? I asked, my voice calm and clear. The one I recorded in our dorm room 3 years ago? The one with the digital timestamp that matches the copyright Vault Lu Entertainment checked last week. Lin Xia's face contorted.
I'll
tell them you hacked me. I'll tell them. You'll tell them nothing, Lu Ju interrupted, his voice like a sheet of falling ice. He stepped up beside me, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. The demo you just uploaded was a trap, Lin Xia. We leaked a slightly altered version to your private cloud yesterday. It contains a frequency watermark that identifies it as a 2024 recording, made on a Lu Entertainment server. You just publicly proved that you've been accessing Xinyao's private files. Lin Xia froze, her jaw dropping. The tablet slipped from her hand, clattering onto the concrete floor.
What?
It's called a digital forensic trail, I said, stepping closer to her. I looked at the woman who had once been my best friend, the woman who had murdered me for a spotlight she couldn't hold. You were so desperate to bury me that you dug your own grave. The press isn't calling you a victim, Xia. They're calling you a thief. You planned this, she whispered, her voice breaking. Both of you. You lured me into it. I didn't lure you into being a fraud, Xia. You chose that path all on your own, I said. And as for the voice of the century, the label just issued a formal termination of your contract. You aren't even a backup singer anymore. You're a liability. Security, Lu Ju said, not even looking at her. Escort Miss Lin to the exit. And make sure the reporters at the stage door get a good look at her. I want the world to see what a forgery looks like when the ink runs. As the guards dragged a screaming, sobbing Lin Xia away, I felt a strange sense of finality. The ghost was gone. The debt was paid. I turned back to Lu Ju, finding him watching me with an expression that was part pride and part something much deeper. Are you all right? He asked, his hand shifting from my back to cup the side of my face. I'm better than all right, I said, leaning into his touch. I'm free. Good, he murmured, his thumb brushing over my lower lip. Because I have a car waiting, a bottle of very expensive wine, and a sudden urge to tell you exactly how much I want to hear you sing, without the cameras watching. Is that the CEO talking or the man? I asked, a flirty spark returning to my eyes. The man, he said, before leaning down to capture my lips in a kiss that tasted of victory and a brand new beginning. The digital billboard in the center of the city was 50 feet tall, and for the last month, it had belonged entirely to me. My face, no longer hidden in the shadows, no longer a secret to be traded, stared out over the skyline. Beneath my image, the words Shenhuayo, the voice of rebirth, glowed in a soft, triumphant gold. In the bottom corner, the news ticker scrolled relentlessly. Lin Xia's final appeal denied, former pop star to pay millions in copyright damages. Lu Entertainment stock hits record high. I stood on the balcony of Lu Ju's penthouse, the cool night breeze tugging at the hem of my silk robe. Below me, the city was a carpet of diamonds, but I was no longer afraid of the height. I had already hit the ground once. I knew exactly what it took to get back up. You're staring at your own shadow again, Yawa, a voice said, vibrating with a warmth that sent a familiar shiver down my spine. I didn't need to turn around to know Lu Ju was there. I felt the heat of his body before he even touched me. He stepped up behind me, his arms sliding around my waist, pulling me back against the solid strength of his chest. He rested his chin on my shoulder, his dark eyes following my gaze to the billboard. I'm not looking at the shadow, Ju, I said, leaning my head back against him. I'm looking at the light. It's strange. I spent my whole first life wanting this, and now that I have it, the only thing that feels real is this moment. Right here. That's because the fame is a ghost, but I'm not, he murmured, his breath warm against the curve of my ear. He turned me in his arms, so I was forced to face him. He looked devastatingly relaxed, his white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his usual icy professional mask melted away by the privacy of the night. You've officially dismantled her, you know. Lin Xia was spotted at a low-end karaoke bar yesterday, trying to convince the manager she was the real, voice of ethereal. They laughed her out of the building. She chose her own ending, I said, a flicker of cold satisfaction passing through me. She thought she could steal a soul and keep the music. She forgot that the music always belongs to the one who bled for it. And you bled more than most, Lu Ju said, his expression softening into something raw and possessive. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of my lower lip. Which is why I've decided that the joint venture contract isn't enough anymore. My heart skipped a beat. Are you firing me, CEO Lu? I teased, my eyes sparkling with a flirty challenge. I'm promoting you, he whispered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. When he flicked it open, a ring featuring a rare black diamond, surrounded by a halo of white flames, caught the moonlight. I want a lifetime contract, Yaoer. No exit clauses. No hidden fine print. Just you and me, running this empire until we burn it down together. Is this a business proposal or a marriage one? I asked, my voice breathy. It's an acquisition of the heart, he replied, a smirk playing on his lips before his gaze turned intense. I love you, Xinyao. Not just the voice, and not just the fire. I love the woman who looked death in the eye and told it to wait its turn. Will you stay? I looked at the ring, then up at the man who had seen my ghost, and decided to make it a queen. I realized then that the vengeance had been the fuel, but he was the destination. I think I can find some room in my schedule for a lifetime, I said, a tear of genuine happiness blurring my vision. Yes, Ju. I'll stay. As he slipped the ring onto my finger and pulled me into a kiss that tasted of victory and forever, I realized the transition was complete. The girl who died under the lights was gone. The woman standing on the balcony was a legend in the making. The song was finally mine, and the encore was only just beginning.